I never meant for it to become what it did. When I started this whole thing back in 2004, I was just a lonely guy with too much money and not enough purpose, trying to make one kid's Christmas a little brighter. Now, 20 years later, I'm sitting in my living room watching the sunset over Pinewood, Montana, population 1,247, knowing that tomorrow morning when the whole town finds out the truth, everything is going to change. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. My name is James Mitchell, though most people in Pinewood just call me Jim. I'm 58 years old, and I've lived in this town for the past 23 years. Before that, I lived in New York City, where I worked as an investment banker for Goldman Sachs. I was good at my job, very good. By the time I was 32, I'd made enough money to retire comfortably. By 35, I'd made enough to retire luxuriously. But I was miserable. My wife, Caroline, had died 2 years earlier from ovarian cancer. We'd been trying to have kids when she got diagnosed. The treatments didn't work. She died 3 weeks after our 8th anniversary, and I was left alone in a city of 8 million people, surrounded by wealth that meant nothing without her. I couldn't do it anymore. The apartment we'd shared, the job that had consumed my life, the people who only cared about quarterly earnings and profit margins, it all felt empty. So in the fall of 2001, I quit everything. I sold the apartment, liquidated most of my assets, and went looking for somewhere small and quiet where I could disappear. I found Pinewood by accident. I was driving through Montana, no particular destination in mind, when my car broke down about 5 miles outside of town. A local mechanic named Frank Holloway towed me in, fixed my transmission for a fraction of what it would have cost in the city, and refused to let me pay for the tow. "We look after folks out here," he told me with a gap-toothed smile. "That's just how it is." I stayed at the Pinewood Inn for 3 days while waiting for a part to arrive. In that time, I fell in love with the town. It was everything New York wasn't: quiet, friendly, real. People knew each other's names. They helped each other without expecting anything in return. Main Street had a hardware store, a diner, a small grocery store, and a post office that doubled as a community center. It reminded me of the town where Caroline had grown up, the one she'd always talked about returning to someday. Before my car was fixed, I'd made an offer on a house. A month later, I'd moved to Pinewood permanently. The first few years were simple. I kept to myself mostly, lived off my investments, did some consulting work online to keep busy. People were curious about the city guy who'd moved to their tiny town, but they were polite about it. Eventually, I became just another resident. Jim, the quiet guy who lived in the old Peterson place at the edge of town. Everything changed in December 2004. I was having breakfast at Rosie's Diner, the only place in town to get a decent meal if you didn't want to cook, when I overheard a conversation in the booth behind me. A woman was talking to her friend, and she was crying. "I don't know what to tell Emma," she said. "She's been so good this year, and she's only asking for one thing. One thing. But we just can't afford it." I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the diner was small, and her voice carried. "Sarah. Every kid wants things their parents can't afford," her friend said gently. "Emma will understand. She's 7 years old. She shouldn't have to understand. She should get to have a normal Christmas." The woman Sarah left shortly after. I asked Rosie, the owner, about her. "Sarah Hendricks," Rosie told me. "Sweet girl. Husband died in Afghanistan 2 years ago. She's raising their daughter Emma alone, working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Times are tough for a lot of folks around here." I couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, I looked up Sarah Hendricks in the phone book. Yes, Pinewood still had phone books in 2004, and found her address. 2 days later, I drove past her house. It was a small place, well maintained despite obvious age, with Christmas lights strung along the porch that probably used more electricity than Sarah could afford. I went home and thought about Caroline. About how much she'd loved Christmas. About how she'd always said that if we had kids, she'd make sure they had magical Christmases, the kind she'd had growing up. The next day, I went shopping. I drove 2 hours to Billings, to a Target where nobody would know me. I bought a bicycle, a nice one, pink with streamers on the handlebars and a bell. I bought a helmet, a lock, training wheels, even though I wasn't sure if a 7-year-old still needed them. I bought other things too, art supplies, books, a warm winter coat that looked about the right size, new snow boots. I spent about $400, which I know is ridiculous for a kid you don't even know. But money had never been the issue. Loneliness was the issue. Purpose was the issue. On the night of December 23rd, after I was sure everyone was asleep, I loaded everything into my truck and drove to Sarah Hendrick's house. I left all of it on the porch wrapped, with a note that said simply, "For Emma. Merry Christmas. Santa." I didn't sign my real name. I didn't want credit. I just wanted that little girl to have the Christmas her mother couldn't afford to give her. I drove home, went to bed, and didn't think much more about it. Until 2 days later, when I went back to Rosie's diner for breakfast. The whole town was buzzing about it. Sarah had come in with Emma, and Emma was wearing her new coat and snow boots, talking excitedly about Santa Claus and how he'd brought her the bicycle she'd wished for and so much more. Sarah was crying again, but this time from happiness. "I don't know who did it," she kept saying. "But whoever you are, wherever you are, thank you. You gave my daughter her Christmas back." I sat in my booth, eating my eggs and bacon, saying nothing. But I felt something I hadn't felt since Caroline died. I felt like I mattered. The next December, I did it again. But not just for one family, for three. I'd spent the year paying attention, listening to the conversations around town. I learned that the Martinez family had 4 kids and both parents had lost their jobs when the sawmill closed. I learned that old Mrs. Peterson, no relation to the previous owners of my house, was living on Social Security and couldn't afford to heat her whole house during the winter. I learned that the Anderson twins were both going to community college and working full-time to pay for it, barely scraping by. On December 23, 2005, I made my rounds again. The Martinez family found groceries on their porch, $500 worth. Enough to last them months, plus toys for all 4 kids and gift cards to the hardware store where Mr. Martinez had been looking for work. Mrs. Peterson found an anonymous payment had been made on her heating oil account, enough to keep her warm all winter, plus a basket of gourmet foods she'd never have bought herself. The Anderson twins each found envelopes with $2,000 in cash and a note, for tuition. "You're doing great. Keep going." This time, the town didn't just buzz about it. They went crazy. People started calling it the Pinewood miracle. They speculated about who could be behind it. Some thought it was the church, though Pastor Williams denied it. Some thought it was a wealthy benefactor from out of town, someone who'd passed through and been moved by Pinewood's charm. Some even thought it might be a group of people working together. Nobody suspected me. I was just Jim, the quiet guy who kept to himself. Year after year, I kept it up. And year after year, it grew. By 2008, I was helping a dozen families. By 2010, it was 20. I developed a system. Throughout the year, I'd listen, observe, pay attention. I'd note who was struggling, who needed help, what kind of help would make the biggest difference. I'd keep a list in a notebook hidden in my house, updating it as I learned more. I never helped the same family twice, or at least, not obviously. My rule was that each family should get one big Christmas, one year where they didn't have to worry, where they could just enjoy the holiday. After that, I'd move on to someone else who needed it more. I learned to be strategic. I'd diversify my shopping across multiple stores in multiple cities so nobody would notice one person buying huge quantities of gifts. I'd use cash when possible. I'd do my deliveries late at night, parking my truck far away and carrying things on foot to avoid being seen. It became my purpose. My reason for being in Pinewood. I'd made more money than I could ever spend in my lifetime, and this was what it was for. Not for a bigger house or a fancier car or exotic vacations. For this. For making sure that families in a struggling town could have one perfect Christmas. Because Pinewood was struggling. The sawmill closure in 2005 had been devastating. Then the recession hit in 2008. By 2010, the population had dropped from nearly 2,000 to under 1,500. Young people were leaving for bigger cities with better job prospects. Businesses on Main Street were closing. But every December, for one magical week, the town came alive again. People stopped worrying about their problems and started talking about the Pinewood miracle. They'd gather at Rosie's diner or the post office, sharing stories about who'd been helped this year, marveling at the generosity of their mysterious benefactor. The local paper, the Pinewood Gazette, just a 4-page weekly printed by a guy named Doug in his garage, started running annual stories about it. By 2012, the story had been picked up by a few regional news outlets. By 2015, a crew from a national morning show came out to do a segment on America's most generous town. That's when things got complicated. The attention brought tourists. People started coming to Pinewood in December, hoping to witness the miracle themselves. The Pinewood Inn, which had been barely surviving, started booking up every December. Rosie's Diner had lines out the door. The hardware store and the grocery store saw a boost in sales. The town started recovering. Not entirely, not dramatically, but enough. People stopped leaving. A few even moved back. New businesses opened: a coffee shop, a gift shop catering to the tourists, a bed and breakfast. The mayor, a woman named Patricia Donovan who'd been elected in 2013, started calling it the Pinewood effect. She gave interviews about how one person's generosity had saved a dying town, how it had reminded everyone of the importance of community and kindness. And I sat back and watched, still saying nothing, still just being Jim. But maintaining the secret got harder every year. The town started organizing. In 2016, they formed a Miracle Watch Committee. Volunteers would patrol the streets on the nights leading up to Christmas, hoping to catch Santa in the act. I had to get more creative. I started making my deliveries earlier in December, or sometimes even in November, storing everything carefully and then distributing it all at once. I had a few close calls. In 2017, I was carrying a box of toys to the Brennan family's house when their dog started barking. I had to hide behind a truck for 20 minutes until everyone went back to sleep. In 2019, young Tommy Peterson, Mrs. Peterson's great-nephew who'd moved to town, installed a Ring doorbell. I had to abort that delivery and come back 2 nights later after using a small EMP device I'd bought online to temporarily disable it. I'm not proud of that one, but desperate times. This year, 2024, I turned 58. And for the first time, I started to feel my age. The deliveries got harder. I was carrying heavy boxes in freezing temperatures, climbing porches, moving quickly and quietly, all things that were easier at 38 than at 58. I started to wonder how much longer I could keep this up. But I'd made a list for 2024. 15 families this year, plus some help for the high school's music program, which had been cut due to budget constraints, and a donation to the volunteer fire department for new equipment. I'd spent most of November shopping, spending nearly $45,000 in total. Everything was wrapped, organized, and stored in my basement, ready for delivery. I planned to start on the night of December 20th. That's when Emily Chen figured it out. Emily was 16, a junior at Pinewood High School, and apparently much smarter than I'd given her credit for. She'd grown up hearing stories about the Pinewood miracle. The first delivery I'd ever made was the year she was born. She'd decided to make solving the mystery her senior project. On the afternoon of December 19th, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Emily standing on my porch, holding a laptop and a notebook, with a determined expression on her face. "Mr. Mitchell," she said. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, Emily. Is everything okay?" "That depends. Are you the Pinewood Santa?" My heart stopped. I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry, what?" "I've been working on this for 6 months. I created a database of every family that's been helped over the past 20 years. Then I cross-referenced it with financial records who in town would have the resources to spend $30,000 to $50,000 every year on gifts. There are only 3 people in Pinewood with that kind of disposable income." She opened her laptop and showed me a spreadsheet. My name was highlighted. The other 2 have alibis for multiple years. One was out of the country in 2018. The other was in the hospital during 2020. But you've been here every single year. You moved to Pinewood in 2001. The miracle started in 2004, 3 years after your wife died. That's a reasonable grieving period before starting something like this. I should have denied it. Should have laughed it off, told her she was being ridiculous. But I was tired. Tired of hiding, tired of pretending, tired of being alone with the secret for 20 years. So instead, I said, "Would you like to come in?" We sat at my kitchen table, and I told her everything. The whole story, From that first overheard conversation at Rosie's diner to my close call with the Ring doorbell to my plans for this year. Emily listened, taking notes, her eyes getting wider with each detail. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. "Mr. Mitchell, do you have any idea what you've done? You didn't just help individual families. You saved this entire town. Pinewood was dying, and you gave everyone a reason to hope, to stay, to believe in something good." "I just wanted to help," I said quietly. "I had the money. It didn't mean anything sitting in a bank account. So what are you going to do now? You can't keep doing this forever. You said yourself it's getting harder." "I don't know," I admitted. "This year might be my last." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "What if we went public? What if we told everyone the truth?" "No," I said immediately. "That's not what this is about. It was never about recognition or credit. I know that. But Mr. Mitchell, think about it. Right now, the Pinewood miracle is one person's generosity. But what if it became everyone's generosity? What if knowing the truth inspired other people to help? What if instead of one secret Santa, Pinewood had 100 people doing small acts of kindness year-round?" "I'd never thought about it that way." "I won't publish my project without your permission," Emily continued. "But I think you should consider it. You've spent 20 years teaching this town that kindness matters. Maybe it's time to let them carry on the lesson themselves." That was 3 days ago. I've been thinking about nothing else since. Tonight is December 23rd. Tomorrow morning, Emily's project will be published in the Pinewood Gazette and posted online. In it, she'll reveal that I'm the Pinewood Santa, complete with all the evidence she's gathered. She'll explain my motivation, my methods, and my hope that the tradition continues even after I can't do it anymore. I've given her my permission. I'm terrified. Tomorrow, my quiet life ends. People will want to talk to me, thank me, probably interview me. The attention I've avoided for 2 decades will be unavoidable. But Emily was right. I can't do this forever. My back aches, my knees hurt, and last week I had to stop 3 times while carrying boxes because I was short of breath. This year's deliveries were already done. I finished them last night, my final run as the anonymous Pinewood Santa. And maybe it's time. Maybe after 20 years, it's time for the truth. Not for my sake, but for the town's. Because the real miracle of Pinewood isn't that one rich guy spent his money on Christmas presents. The real miracle is what that generosity inspired in everyone else. I've watched this town come together year after year, watched strangers become friends, watched people help each other in ways that have nothing to do with me. I didn't save Pinewood. Pinewood saved itself. I just gave everyone a reason to remember what they were capable of. So tomorrow morning, when the truth comes out, I'm going to face it. I'm going to answer questions, accept thanks, and probably feel very uncomfortable about all of it. But I'm also going to challenge them. I'm going to tell them that the Pinewood miracle shouldn't end just because I can't climb porches in the middle of the night anymore. I'm going to ask them to continue it, each in their own way, helping their neighbors however they can. Because Caroline was right about one thing, Christmas isn't about money or presents. It's about showing people they matter. That someone sees them, cares about them, wants to help them. I've spent 20 years doing that from the shadows. Maybe it's time to do it in the light. It's 11:47 p.m. now. In 13 minutes, it will be Christmas Eve. In a few hours, the sun will rise on my first Christmas as a known entity instead of a mystery. I'm sitting here in my living room, the same one I've sat in for 23 years, looking at the photo of Caroline I keep on the mantle. She's smiling in it, the way she always smiled at Christmas, with her whole face, with pure joy. I think she'd be proud of what I've done. I hope she'd understand why I kept it secret for so long. And I think she'd approve of finally letting go, trusting the town to carry on without me. Merry Christmas, Caroline, I say to the photograph. I finally did something that mattered. The clock strikes midnight. Christmas Eve has arrived. And for the first time in 20 years, I'm not sneaking around in the dark with boxes of presents. I'm sitting in my living room, at peace, ready for whatever tomorrow brings. The Pinewood miracle isn't ending. It's evolving. And that's the best Christmas present I could ask for. Epilogue, Christmas morning, 6:47 a.m. There's a knock on my door. I open it to find half the town standing on my lawn. Sarah Hendricks is at the front, and Emma, now 27, married, with a daughter of her own, is beside her. Behind them are the Martinez family, the Anderson twins, Mrs. Peterson's great-nephew Tommy, and dozens of other faces I recognize. People I've helped. People I've watched grow up. People who make up the fabric of this town. Sarah is holding a copy of the Pinewood Gazette, Emily's article visible on the front page. "Mr. Mitchell," she says, her voice trembling. "Is it true?" I could still deny it. But I don't. "Yes," I say simply. "It's true." For a moment, there's silence. Then Sarah steps forward and hugs me, sobbing into my shoulder. "Thank you," she whispers. "Thank you for giving my daughter Christmas. Thank you for giving all of us hope." One by one, they come forward. Handshakes, hugs, tears, expressions of gratitude that make me deeply uncomfortable and deeply grateful at the same time. Emily pushes through the crowd, grinning. "I told you it would be okay. You're a very smart young woman," I tell her. "I know," she says with teenage confidence. Then, more seriously, "Thank you for trusting me with this." Mayor Patricia Donovan steps forward. "Jim, the town council met this morning emergency session. We want to make a proposition." "What kind of proposition?" "We're establishing the Pinewood Community Fund. Every family you've helped over the years wants to contribute. Hell, everyone in town wants to contribute. We're going to formalize what you started, make it permanent. Not just at Christmas, but year-round. When someone needs help, the community will be there." I feel tears in my eyes for the first time in years. That's perfect." "And Jim?" Patricia smiles. "We'd like you to be on the board. To help us make sure we're doing it right." I look at all these faces. My town. My community. The place that gave me purpose when I thought I'd never have purpose again. "I'd be honored," I say. The sun is fully up now, Christmas morning light spreading across Pinewood, making the snow sparkle like diamonds. Emily was right. The Pinewood miracle didn't need to be a secret anymore. It needed to be shared. And now it will be, for generations to come. Merry Christmas, Pinewood. Merry Christmas, Caroline. Merry Christmas to everyone who's ever needed a miracle and found one in the kindness of strangers. This is the best Christmas I've ever had. And I didn't even have to sneak around in the dark to make it happen.